Most people believe attraction is created through effort. They believe the more attention you give, the more love you show, and the more available you become, the stronger the connection will be. But when it comes to an avoidant personality, the exact opposite is often true. An avoidant is not running from love. They are running from what they believe love will eventually cost them: freedom, control, peace. The average person sees distance and thinks, I need to move closer. The avoidant sees someone moving closer and thinks, I need to create distance. That is why so many people become trapped in a painful cycle. One person chases, the other withdraws. One demands reassurance, the other becomes silent. One pushes for answers. The other disappears, and both people end up frustrated because neither understands the deeper psychology underneath the behavior. Now, here is something fascinating. Many older women naturally attract avoidance without even realizing what they are doing. Why? Because experience has taught them something younger people often struggle to learn. Neediness repels, security attracts. When someone becomes emotionally secure, they stop trying to force outcomes. They stop treating relationships like negotiations. They stop measuring their worth by another person's attention, and that calm energy changes everything. There are three words that often communicate this energy more powerfully than any long emotional speech. Three words. I understand that. Simple, quiet, powerful. Most people hear those words and think they are ordinary. They are not. Because when an avoidant expects pressure and receives understanding instead, their nervous system experiences something unexpected: safety. Think about what happens in most relationships. The avoidant pulls away. Immediately questions begin. Why are you distant? Why are you ignoring me? Do you still care? What is wrong? Each question may seem reasonable, yet to the avoidant, it often feels like emotional pursuit. Pressure, expectation, demand, and pressure activates resistance. But when someone calmly says, I understand that, something different happens. The avoidant feels seen rather than judged. They feel accepted rather than analyzed. They feel respected rather than managed. And respect is one of the deepest emotional needs an avoidant carries. Not because they are cold, not because they don't care, but because somewhere in their past they learned that vulnerability can be dangerous. So they built walls, not to keep everyone out, but to keep themselves safe. The person who understands this gains tremendous influence, not through manipulation, not through games, but through wisdom. Because wisdom recognizes that every behavior has a reason behind it, every wall has a story, every defense mechanism was created for protection. When you understand that, you stop taking everything personally. Things do think. You stop interpreting distance as rejection. You stop assuming silence means lack of interest. And suddenly, your emotional state becomes stronger, calmer, more attractive. There is another reason these three words are powerful. They communicate abundance. People who are desperate for connection cannot genuinely say, I understand that. Their fear gets in the way. Their insecurity demands immediate results. Their anxiety wants certainty. But secure individuals understand something profound. People move toward connection at different speeds. Growth happens in stages. Trust develops gradually, and forcing intimacy usually delays intimacy. The mature person understands timing. The mature person understands patience. The mature person understands that what is meant to grow cannot be rushed. This is one reason emotionally grounded older women often captivate avoidants. They are less interested in controlling the outcome. They are more interested in understanding the process. And understanding creates influence. The irony is that avoidants often crave connection more than people realize. They think about relationships. They desire companionship. They long for emotional closeness. Yet the moment closeness feels overwhelming, they retreat. Not because the feelings disappeared, but because fear became louder than desire. Many people misread this completely. They assume withdrawal means absence of emotion. Sometimes it means the emotion became too strong. The palm confidence becomes magnetic. The avoidant expects drama. The avoidant expects pressure. The avoidant expects demands. Instead, they encounter someone centered, someone patient, someone emotionally grounded, someone who says, I understand that, and suddenly the entire interaction changes. The walls begin to lower, trust begins to form, communication becomes easier, not because the avoidant was fixed, but because they finally encountered an environment where they did not feel threatened. There is a deeper lesson here that extends far beyond relationships. The greatest power in life comes from understanding, not control, not force, not pressure. Understanding. The moment you truly understand another human being, your reactions become wiser, your emotions become steadier, your decisions become clearer. You stop fighting reality, you begin working with it, and that principle applies everywhere. In love, in family, in friendship, in leadership, in faith. The strongest people are not those who dominate others. The strongest people are those who master themselves. The strongest people remain calm when others become emotional, patient when others become anxious, compassionate when others become defensive. Because true strength is internal. It is not measured by how tightly you hold on. It is measured by how peacefully you can let things unfold. So, if you are dealing with an avoidant, remember this. Do not focus on chasing, focus on understanding. Do not focus on controlling, focus on connecting. Do not focus on forcing closeness. Focus on becoming the kind of person whose presence feels safe. Because attraction grows where safety exists. Trust grows where understanding exists. And connection grows where freedom exists. Sometimes the most powerful words are not the loudest. Sometimes the words that transform a relationship are not dramatic at all. Sometimes they are simply 3 quiet words spoken from confidence, wisdom, and genuine understanding. I understand that. And when those words come from a place of strength rather than need, they become far more than words. They become an invitation to trust, an invitation to relax, an invitation to connect. And in a world where so many people are trying to be understood, the person who understands often becomes unforgettable. Most people make the same mistake when dealing with an avoidant person. They assume distance means disinterest. They assume silence means rejection. They assume that if someone truly cared, they would naturally want more closeness, more conversations, and more emotional intensity. But avoidant psychology works differently. An avoidant is often not reacting to the relationship itself. They are reacting to what the relationship represents in their mind. While many people associate intimacy with comfort, avoidants frequently associate intimacy with risk. Think slow, the closer they feel to someone, the more vulnerable they become. And vulnerability can trigger anxiety that even they do not fully understand. This is why emotional safety becomes more important than emotional pressure. Pressure creates resistance. Safety creates openness. The more someone tries to force an avoidant into deeper connection, the more likely that avoidant is to retreat. Not because they don't care, but because their nervous system interprets pressure as a threat to their independence. They begin to feel trapped, controlled, or overwhelmed. Their instinct is not to move closer. Their instinct is to create distance so they can regain a sense of emotional balance. Many people respond to this withdrawal by increasing their efforts. They send more messages, they ask more questions, they seek more reassurance. They try harder to prove their love and commitment. Yet every additional attempt often produces the opposite result. The avoidant feels cornered rather than comforted. What was intended as affection is interpreted as expectation. What was intended as connection is experienced as pressure. Emotional safety is different. Emotional safety tells someone they are accepted without conditions. It communicates that they do not have to perform, explain themselves constantly, or meet impossible expectations to earn your approval. When an avoidant senses this kind of environment, their defenses begin to relax. They stop spending so much energy protecting themselves. They become more willing to share thoughts, feelings, and experiences because they no longer fear being judged, criticized, or controlled. This is one reason emotionally mature individuals often have better success with avoidance. They understand that trust cannot be rushed. They understand that genuine connection develops through patience rather than force. They do not panic every time there is distance. They do not interpret every quiet moment as a sign of disaster. Instead, they remain steady. Their confidence comes from within, rather than from constant validation from another person. The truth is that emotional safety is attractive to everyone, but it is especially powerful with avoidance because it addresses their deepest fear. Their greatest fear is not usually love itself. Their greatest fear is losing themselves within love. They fear being consumed by expectations, obligations, and emotional demands. When they meet someone who respects their boundaries while still offering genuine care, something remarkable happens. The relationship begins to feel different from what they have experienced before. The strongest connections are rarely built through pressure. They are built through understanding. They are built through patience. They are built through the ability to remain calm when circumstances encourage panic. When you create emotional safety, you give another person permission to lower their guard. And when that guard comes down naturally rather than through force, trust grows deeper, communication becomes easier, and real intimacy has a chance to develop. That is why emotional safety, not pressure, is often the true key that opens the heart of an avoidant person. One of the biggest misconceptions about attraction is the belief that attention creates connection. Many people assume that if they continuously show interest, constantly check in, and repeatedly express their feelings, they will naturally become more attractive. While this approach may work with some personalities, it often has the opposite effect on an avoidant. What captures an avoidant's attention is not usually pursuit, it is curiosity. Curiosity creates space for discovery, while pursuit often creates pressure. And pressure is something avoidants instinctively resist. Human beings are naturally drawn toward things they do not fully understand. The mind seeks completion. It wants answers. It wants clarity. When everything is immediately available, predictable, and explained, there is little left to explore. Curiosity disappears. But when there is mystery, depth, and emotional balance, interest begins to grow naturally. This psychological principle becomes especially important when dealing with an avoidant personality. Avoidants are often accustomed to people chasing them. They are used to emotional demands, repeated questions, and attempts to pull them closer before they feel ready. Over time, they develop defenses against this pattern. The moment they sense someone trying too hard to gain their attention, a protective response can activate. Their instinct tells them to slow down, pull back, or create distance. They may not even consciously realize they are doing it. It simply feels necessary for their emotional comfort. Curiosity works differently because it does not demand, it invites. It does not push, it attracts. Instead of communicating, "You need to respond to me," curiosity communicates, "There is more here to discover if you choose to explore it." This subtle difference changes everything. Think the avoidant no longer feels trapped by expectations. Instead, they feel free to engage on their own terms. Think about the people who naturally command attention in any environment. They are rarely the loudest people in the room. They are often the calmest. They do not feel the need to constantly prove their value. They do not chase approval. Their confidence creates intrigue because it suggests depth. People become curious about what makes them so comfortable within themselves. The same principle applies in relationships. When someone is emotionally secure, they do not reveal everything immediately. They allow connection to unfold naturally. They maintain their own goals, passions, and purpose. They have a life that exists beyond the relationship. This independence creates a healthy sense of curiosity because it communicates that their happiness is not dependent on another person's validation. Ironically, this often makes them far more attractive. Curiosity also encourages an avoidant to participate emotionally. When they are not being pressured, they begin asking questions. They begin seeking understanding. They become interested in learning more about the person in front of them. The relationship starts to feel like a choice rather than an obligation. And when an avoidant feels they have a choice, they are far more likely to move toward connection. There is a deeper lesson hidden within this principle. The most attractive quality a person can possess is not the ability to chase. It is the ability to remain grounded in their own value. People who know their worth do not spend their lives convincing others to see it. They simply live it. Their confidence creates curiosity because it reflects inner peace rather than desperation. When dealing with an avoidant, remember that attraction grows best in an atmosphere of freedom. Curiosity leaves room for freedom. It allows connection to develop without force. It encourages genuine interest instead of compliance. And because curiosity engages the mind while respecting emotional boundaries, it often reaches an avoidant more effectively than any amount of pursuit ever could. The less you focus on chasing attention, the more likely you are to become someone worth discovering. One of the most misunderstood concepts in relationships is the power of space. Many people view space as a sign of disconnection. They see distance and immediately assume something is wrong. They believe that if two people truly care about each other, they should constantly communicate, constantly reassure one another, and constantly seek more closeness. While connection is important, avoidant psychology reveals a different truth. For some individuals, especially those with avoidant tendencies, too much closeness too quickly can feel overwhelming. This is why psychological space becomes so powerful. Space is not the enemy of connection. In many cases, it is what allows connection to survive. The three simple words often associated with this principle communicate a deeper message than most people realize. They signal freedom. They signal respect. They signal understanding. Most importantly, they signal that the other person is not being forced into emotional engagement before they are ready. For an avoidant, this can immediately lower internal resistance. Avoidants often carry an invisible fear that many people never see. They may fear losing their independence. They may fear becoming responsible for another person's emotional stability. They may fear expectations they believe they cannot meet. Even when they genuinely care about someone, these fears can create internal conflict. Part of them desires connection, while another part wants to protect their sense of freedom. This conflict is exhausting because it pulls them in opposite directions at the same time. When someone pressures an avoidant for reassurance, answers, or immediate closeness, those fears become stronger. The avoidant begins focusing on escape rather than connection. Their attention shifts from the relationship itself to the pressures surrounding it. What could have become intimacy instead becomes stress. What could have become trust instead becomes resistance. Psychological space interrupts this cycle. It communicates something profoundly important. You are free to be yourself. These words may never be spoken directly, but the message is, and Lilu just think, understand, potentially disappoint. Instead of demanding emotional performance, space allows authenticity. Instead of creating obligation, it creates comfort. Instead of forcing movement, it encourages natural movement. Think about nature for a moment. A flower cannot be forced to bloom by pulling on its petals. The harder you pull, the more damage you create. Growth happens when the environment is right. Relationships follow the same principle. Trust cannot be demanded, openness cannot be commanded. Emotional intimacy develops when people feel safe enough to lower their defenses voluntarily. This is why emotional maturity is so attractive. Mature individuals understand that they cannot control another person's timing. They cannot force emotional readiness. Think that cannot make someone feel secure through pressure. What they can do is create an atmosphere where trust has room to grow. They understand that confidence is not about holding tighter. Confidence is about remaining secure even when things are unfolding slowly. For an avoidant, space often becomes the very thing that allows them to move closer. When they no longer feel trapped, they become curious. When they no longer feel controlled, they become more open. When they no longer feel pressured, they become more willing to engage emotionally. The walls they once relied upon begin to lose their purpose because the threat they were designed to defend against is no longer present. There is a powerful life lesson hidden in this principle. True connection is never built through force. It is built through freedom. The strongest relationships are not those where people feel obligated to stay. They are those where people choose to stay. Choice creates commitment. Freedom creates trust. Respect creates attraction. The three words that create psychological space are powerful because they communicate acceptance. They tell another person that they are not being chased, controlled, or judged. They communicate confidence rather than desperation. And when an avoidant experiences that kind of emotional environment, their defenses often soften naturally. Space does not weaken connection. When used wisely, it strengthens it. Because the relationships that last are rarely built on pressure. They are built on understanding, patience, and the freedom to grow together without fear. There is something deeply attractive about calm confidence. It does not demand attention, yet it naturally receives it. It does not chase validation, yet people are drawn toward it. This quality is often found in emotionally mature individuals who have lived long enough to understand that true influence comes not from control, but from self-mastery. This is one reason older women often have a unique ability to connect with avoidant personalities. Their attraction is not usually based on games, pressure, or emotional intensity. It is often rooted in a quiet confidence that comes from experience. Life teaches lessons that cannot be learned from books alone. Over the years, people experience success and failure, love and heartbreak, connection and loss. Through these experiences, many older women develop a deeper understanding of themselves. They learn that their worth does not depend on another person's approval. They discover that peace is more valuable than constant drama. They realize that relationships thrive when both people feel respected rather than controlled. This emotional maturity creates an energy that avoidants often find surprisingly comforting. Avoidants are highly sensitive to pressure. They notice when someone is seeking validation through them. They know when another person's happiness seems entirely dependent on their attention. Even if these needs are never spoken aloud, they can often feel them. And when they do, their instinct may be to create distance. Not because they dislike the person, but because the responsibility feels overwhelming. They fear becoming trapped inside expectations they may not be able to fulfill. An emotionally mature woman often approaches relationships differently. She is capable of caring deeply without making another person responsible for her emotional well-being. She can express affection without demanding immediate reciprocity. She can enjoy connection without becoming consumed by it. This balance creates a sense of freedom that avoidants rarely experience in relationships. One of the most attractive qualities of maturity is patience. Younger relationships are often driven by urgency. There is a desire for quick answers, immediate certainty, and rapid progression. Mature individuals understand that meaningful relationships unfold over time. They recognize that trust cannot be rushed, and emotional intimacy cannot be forced. This patience communicates confidence because it shows there is no desperation hiding beneath the surface. Avoidants often expect people to react emotionally when they withdraw. They expect frustration, demands, accusations, or attempts to pull them back. When they encounter someone who remains calm and centered instead, it disrupts those expectations. The avoidant begins to experience something unfamiliar. Instead of pressure, they encounter understanding. Instead of emotional chaos, they encounter stability. This stability feels safe because it removes the fear of being emotionally overwhelmed. Another reason maturity is attractive is that it is grounded in authenticity. Emotionally secure people do not need to pretend to be someone they are not. They are comfortable expressing their thoughts, values, and boundaries. They are not constantly adjusting themselves to gain approval. This authenticity creates trust because it allows others to relax. There is no hidden agenda, no manipulation, and no performance. What you see is what you get. The deeper lesson is that attraction is often less about appearance and more about energy. People are naturally drawn toward those who have developed inner peace. Confidence rooted in self-respect has a magnetic quality because it communicates strength without aggression. It says, I value myself, and I value you, but I do not need to control either of us. For an avoidant, this energy can be incredibly appealing. It offers connection without suffocation. It offers care without pressure. It offers closeness without demands. The mature woman becomes attractive not because she is trying to attract anyone, but because she has learned one of life's greatest truths. The more secure you become within yourself, the more comfortable others feel around you. And for an avoidant personality, comfort is often the first step toward genuine trust and lasting connection. One of the greatest paradoxes in human attraction is that the harder people try to hold on to someone, the more likely they are to push that person away. This principle becomes even more noticeable when dealing with an avoidant personality. Many people assume that attraction grows through constant attention, frequent reassurance, and relentless pursuit. They believe that if they can simply prove how much they care, the other person will eventually move closer. Yet, avoidant psychology often reveals a different reality. What attracts an avoidant is not emotional dependence, it is emotional independence. What captures their attention is not desperation, it is detachment. Detachment is often misunderstood. Many people confuse it with indifference, coldness, or a lack of feeling. True detachment is none of those things. Detachment does not mean you stop caring. It means your emotional stability is no longer dependent on another person's behavior. You can appreciate someone without needing to control them. You can desire connection without becoming consumed by it. You can care deeply while still maintaining your own sense of identity and purpose. This kind of emotional balance creates value because it communicates confidence. People who are detached in a healthy way do not constantly seek reassurance. They do not spend every moment wondering whether they are loved, wanted, or accepted. Their self-worth comes from within. As a result, their presence feels lighter, calmer, and more attractive. There is no pressure attached to them because they are not trying to extract validation from every interaction. Avoidants are particularly sensitive to this difference. They often become uncomfortable when they sense emotional dependency. If they feel responsible for another person's happiness, anxiety, or self-esteem, they may begin pulling away. The relationship starts to feel like a burden rather than a source of connection. Even when they care deeply, they may retreat because the emotional weight feels too heavy. Detachment removes that weight. It creates space for choice. The avoidant no longer feels trapped by expectations. They no longer feel responsible for managing someone else's emotional state. Instead, they experience a relationship where both individuals are capable of standing on their own. This dynamic feels safer because it preserves the sense of freedom that avoidants value so deeply. There is also a psychological principle at work here. Human beings naturally value what appears valuable. When someone constantly chases attention, they unintentionally communicate scarcity within themselves. Their actions suggest they are searching for something they believe they lack. But when someone is emotionally grounded and detached, they communicate abundance. They demonstrate that their life is already meaningful, fulfilling, and purposeful. The relationship becomes a welcome addition rather than a desperate necessity. This abundance mindset is powerful because it shifts the entire dynamic. Instead of asking, "How can I make this person stay?" the emotionally secure individual asks, "How can I continue becoming the best version of myself?" Their focus remains on growth, purpose, and personal fulfillment. Ironically, this self-focus often makes them more attractive because they are no longer operating from fear. Avoidants frequently find themselves drawn to people who possess this quality. They may not consciously understand why. They simply notice that these individuals feel different. There is less pressure, less drama, less need for constant reassurance. The connection feels voluntary rather than obligatory. It feels free rather than restrictive. The deeper lesson extends beyond relationships. Detachment is not merely an attraction strategy. It is a way of living. It is the ability to remain peaceful regardless of external circumstances. It is the ability to maintain your values, your purpose, and your self-respect, whether someone chooses to stay or leave. This inner strength creates a powerful presence because it cannot be shaken by temporary outcomes. When you stop chasing validation, you begin creating value. When you stop trying to force connection, you allow connection to develop naturally. And when you learn to care without clinging, you discover a truth that many people spend years trying to understand. The more complete you become within yourself, the more attractive you become to others. For an avoidant personality, that quiet confidence and healthy detachment can be far more compelling than any pursuit ever could be. At the heart of every successful relationship lies a simple but often overlooked truth. People want to be understood, not managed, not controlled, not fixed, understood. This principle becomes especially important when dealing with avoidant personalities because their behavior is frequently misunderstood. Many people see withdrawal and assume rejection. They see silence and assume a lack of feelings. They see distance and assume a lack of interest. Yet when you begin to understand the psychology behind these behaviors, an entirely different picture starts to emerge. Human behavior rarely exists without a reason. Every action, every reaction, and every emotional response is connected to a deeper story. The avoidant who pulls away is not necessarily trying to hurt someone. The avoidant who becomes quiet is not always trying to create distance. Often they are responding to fears, beliefs, and experiences that were formed long before the current relationship began. Their actions make sense when viewed through the lens of their personal history. This is why understanding human nature is so powerful. It allows you to see beyond the surface. Instead of reacting emotionally to every behavior, you begin asking better questions. What fear might be driving this response? What need is hidden beneath this action? What experience taught this person to protect themselves in this way? So these questions create wisdom because they shift your focus from judgment to understanding. Many relationship problems begin when people interpret everything personally. If an avoidant needs space, the other person assumes they are not loved. If an avoidant becomes quiet, the other person assumes they are losing interest. These interpretations create emotional reactions that often make the situation worse. Anxiety leads to pressure. Pressure leads to withdrawal. Withdrawal leads to more anxiety. The cycle continues because neither person understands what is actually happening. Understanding breaks this cycle. When you recognize that an avoidance behavior is often connected to self-protection rather than rejection, your perspective changes. You become less reactive. You stop seeing every moment of distance as a personal attack. You begin responding with patience instead of panic. This shift alone can transform the entire dynamic of a relationship. There is also a deeper truth about attraction hidden within this principle. People are naturally drawn toward those who make them feel understood. Understanding creates emotional safety. It communicates acceptance. It tells another person that they do not have to constantly defend themselves or explain who they are. For an avoidant, this feeling can be incredibly powerful, because much of their life may have been spent protecting themselves from misunderstanding. So when someone genuinely understands human nature, they stop trying to force outcomes. They recognize that people grow at different speeds. They understand that trust develops over time. They know that emotional walls cannot be torn down through pressure. They must be lowered voluntarily. This patience communicates confidence because it shows respect for another person's journey. The most influential people in the world often possess this quality. They understand that leadership, connection, and attraction are built upon insight rather than control. They study people, they observe patterns, they learn to recognize the needs hidden beneath behaviors. As a result, they are able to connect with others on a deeper level. This principle extends far beyond romantic relationships. It applies to friendships, families, workplaces, and every meaningful human interaction. The ability to understand another person's perspective is one of the greatest skills a person can develop. It reduces conflict, it increases compassion, it strengthens communication. Most importantly, it helps create genuine connection. The irony is that many people spend their lives trying to be understood while rarely attempting to understand others. Yet the person who learns to understand gains something far more valuable than approval. They gain wisdom, they gain perspective. They gain the ability to navigate relationships with greater clarity and effectiveness. And when it comes to avoidant psychology, understanding is not merely helpful, it is transformative. The moment you stop viewing behavior through the lens of fear and start viewing it through the lens of human nature, everything begins to change. Your reactions become calmer, your communication becomes stronger, your presence becomes more reassuring. And in that space of understanding, trust has the opportunity to grow naturally. Because in the end, the deepest connections are not built by those who demand to be understood. They are built by those who choose to understand first.